Hello, everyone, and welcome to another interview episode of What's New in Cloud FinOps. And I'm glad to remember that now I never hesitate with the name of the podcast. It took me 3 years. That's why you remember, Steve, at the beginning?
I think I get that bit. I actually often hesitate at my name.
That's worse. So it's me, Franck Contrepois, with my great friend...
Stephen Old, great to be with you, Frank, and a very exciting guest who I'll let you introduce to.
Absolutely. So today we have, he's going to introduce himself because that's going to be the simplest way. But welcome, Udam, and go with the intro.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Awesome to be here. Thanks, Frank and Stephen, for having me. And I think I've been on the podcast before, so I've done the longer version of the intro. I'll do a shorter version here. Let's see. Basically, last 15 years have been cloud and FinOps. And the FinOps side, really been at the vendor, being at the foundation, also been a practitioner running a pretty advanced FinOps practice. So, excited to kind of talk about that whole cycle, and what I've learned from that experience.
So yeah, because we spoke, it was some time ago. By the way, listeners, I invite you to go and listen to it because it's still up to date. It was about focus because Udam was the chairperson of focus. And now we're going to talk. I think my first question is, what changed since that interview and today?
Yeah. So been up to something pretty exciting. Really comes from my time at Citigroup, where we were running a run stage FinOps practice, and it was really hard. I know you guys are pretty advanced on the practitioner side, and you know the pains of trying to go from kind of the crawl phase of FinOps to more advanced phase. And two things stuck out to me. One was the lack of standardization in the data. Right. And that honestly can't really be solved at a company level because, you go build a data standard there, at Citi, that'll be the Citi standard. Nobody's looking at it as a common standard. So joined the Linux Foundation / FinOps Foundation to, do the focus standard. But then that is just part of the solution. I think that helps everybody. But run stage practices really need very advanced FinOps data to be able to get the broader organization engaged. And I wanted to tackle that as my second challenge. And I know you guys are very passionate about data as well. So I'm excited to geek out about FinOps and data. And kind of what I'm up to in that space now.
Fantastic. For those who would like to go back and look at the story of focus with Udam, that was September the 27th, 2024, which is like 7-8 months ago. Episode 28 of season 5. I don't know how we do the season bits anymore.
Ignore this.
Ignore that. So that was towards the end of last year. It's interesting, right? So people ask me about focus a lot. I've just delivered the FinOps Foundation training today to a wonderful group, and we talked a little bit about it there because they've got some Azure and some AWS, and we kind of started talking a little bit about use cases and the beauty of focus being that it was so adaptable while maybe not as detailed in some regards. So it's about knowing your use cases and augmenting it with your own data, but that suddenly becomes a problem, right? That's suddenly, I need data people. I haven't maybe necessarily got that in my FinOps team. Not everyone has a Frank like I do. I'm average at best at data. I would say sub-average is far more honest. I'm an okay developer, I'm a decent analyst, but the actual data piece, playing with SQL, Frank lives for it. I do not. Yep. And so, it's actually maybe something that's a bit outside the comfort zone for most FinOps practices as it stands.
And I think that's a hugely limiting factor, right? Because we know the data is complicated and it's big, right? So you need really production grade systems to handle that volume of data. And now you're having all of these expectations on your FinOps practice, because let's say, you've gone down the path of building your own stuff. Well, people are going to expect, that that's a production grade system because this is important for business, right? So, many organizations, I think this is the limiting factor. For me at Citi, that was, it was a big challenge, but at least my background, was in engineering and data and FinOps. So like that was great. I also had Amit Kinha, who you guys might know, who leads FinOps there now. He's part of the focus steering committee and stuff. So we had enough of a base, just enough. I always had like recs open to go hire and could never find people. And this is one of the largest banks in the world, and we pay pretty well, right? And we could spend that money because we spend billions of dollars on IT, right? We could invest 4 or 5 people in a team to go solve this big data problem and bring FinOps to the broader organization. But most organizations are not going to have, that level of resources. And even if you get past that like resourcing problem, by the way, I call these people unicorns because you rarely get to talk to these folks that are finance inclined and they have, data background or engineering background and is able to kind of put both sides together to deliver results. Let's say you find the people somehow, right? Then the second problem is, can you provide that continuous investment into this? And a lot of times, hey, this seems like a cool project. We get started, and then who's going to keep up with every update that Azure is making? And Snowflake changes their costs. Elastic has new V2 APIs for billing. Like the reality is, organizations can't continue to invest, 4 or 5 engineers in this stuff in the long term. So inevitably, you just kind of like start moving back to spreadsheets, right? Oh yeah, well this isn't, in the data. Let's just pull it out and start going down to the kind of the old way of doing things. And then that limits your FinOps reach, right? Like your customers are expecting accurate, relevant, actionable data from you. And, your answer is, I don't have resources. So anyway, I think there's a few of these kind of things that are really holding back the maturity of FinOps practices. People are kind of stuck between current tools. Many of them are my friends. So, but this is going to be a little bit edgy, but they really focus on just crawl phase FinOps. How do I just give you high level visibility into costs? And then, so the folks want to move and go build their own stuff. And then it's this other challenge of, where's the people? Can I get continuous investment? Do I have the expertise? And can I actually go, execute a winning strategy here? So, that definitely is something that keeps me up at night, at least.
And recently I was on a call, which was quite interesting, and someone was saying, I'm still trying. So the Focus, the good thing, which I like, is it's also provided kind of natively from the cloud vendors. And usually my guess is that they are converting from what they have before. But the idea is that, I don't remember who was that, but yeah, there are still problems there because every cloud vendor's got a list of compatibilities and incompatibilities, or the thing that it can support or not support. And one of the things is, someone said to me, I still can't find a query that's going to get me, I think it was in Microsoft, the amount I have on my bill.
Yeah.
I say, I have the file. It's the official file. I still can't get the number I have on my bill in any form or way. And those kind of things, these discrepancies, is where, as you say, your unicorns, I feel very Queenie at the moment, those unicorns will go and try to figure out what is the exception to the rule, what is the standard way. And
yeah,
that I totally get. Yep. Sorry.
I'd say like data accuracy and kind of inconsistencies, that's definitely one of the issues. The second issue, I mean, to me, like the mark of a run stage FinOps, I know FinOps Foundation has their own kind of metrics and things. I look at it more as, is your FinOps practice the fixer, or are you the enabler?
Nice.
Okay. So the enabler means you're actually just enabling the broader organization to do FinOps and start getting that value. It's much more scalable. It's the accountability we talk about in FinOps. If you're in the fixer mode, you're trying to just go behind everybody and in a reactive way try to just, fix everything, right? And I think that is not a scalable thing. If you want to be the enabler, your data can't just be accurate. Let's assume you solved all those problems and got your data accurate. It still has to be relevant to your organization, right? Does it have the business context? Does it talk to you in apps and services and departments and organizations, or is it still kind of high level, top of the house data? Does it have shared costs allocated to you so that you have a true picture of your margins or your unit economics, right? These to me are the biggest sign that someone is able to run a run stage FinOps practice. And all of those things basically require data engineering, right? You have to take the billing data that comes from the providers. If it's focus and compliant with focus, great. That you've essentially had to jump like several steps forward, right? That's the value of focus. Now you're able to stack this data sets up. But once you stack them up, you still need to contextualize them. Without that context, you can't really expect to take this to the broader organization. So yeah, I think there's multiple areas on the data side of things that need to be solved.
One of the big issues I always saw, so I did look at building my own tools a couple of times in a few different places actually, but when I was looking at in my last place before Senjaga, I really wanted to drive more towards unit economics and this kind of stuff. And when I sat down with a guy called Alex who literally built his own FinOps tool, he said the problem is getting access to the data. People don't want to send business data outside of the business, or if they already have it in Salesforce, for instance, which you could argue is outside of the business, they still don't really want to give you access to that, which I was like, initially I was thinking, that seems mad. Like, it's already out of the business. Why not it's connected to somewhere else that's out of the business? But there's a big resistance to it. And so it was a case of, well, okay, then do we build a tool that can be built in someone's environment? Is that the answer instead? Which then became really challenging in terms of how you manage that. And there are a couple of tools out there on the market now which are going down that route, which I think is quite interesting. But did you see that in Citi, that you very much felt that you had to take you had to take some ownership of this data? If you were going to be pulling in data from different places, someone had to be accountable for managing that piece, right?
Yeah. I mean, like those data classification and kind of security related things we had in spades at Citi, right? Like they're very, very careful about those things. But to your point, sometimes it's a little bit hypocritical, right? Because, let's say you use Aptio cost transparency, or sorry, I think it's called Aptio One or whatever now, like the product that brings in a lot of business data and it is allowing you to do the modeling. Well, that is not in your environment anymore. You've poked some holes to like let that data flow through so you can actually get this value. And you can argue, pretty much every cloud, cost management software is doing the same thing. You're poking a hole into your S3 or, Azure storage account to give them access to the data. So yeah, I think that credibility and kind of making sure you have all the security aspects buttoned up is important. But also I think people just have to weigh this. If you remember, KubeCost primarily used to, run on premise in the customer's environment. The common complaint was that, hey, this is getting too complicated for us to manage.
Yep.
So, people wanted a managed service offering for that, right? Because at the end of the day, you have to weigh the risks of, essentially exposing maybe some access to to the value you get of not having to be an expert in somebody else's tool or possibly your own tool and continuously trying to keep that up and running. I do think the hybrid option is a really interesting one. I myself am looking at that today. Some of what we're building, I don't think we talked about it much, but maybe we'll get into it later. But we try not to store any of the customer data, right? Not try. I just said we don't store any of the customer data. We do the processing and then we hand off the data back to the customer so that, yes, did you still have to give us access, but you didn't have to worry about the long-term storage of that data on our system. You process the data and then you hand it off and then it's deleted from our side. And then, there's no longer-term storage of that. So that's one option. The other hybrid option is, CI/CD, for example, does this option of, the agent runs on your side, and then, the engine or the coordination and all of that runs centrally in a SaaS environment. So that's another option as well that kind of lets you keep maybe the data without crossing the boundary of your network, and you can still get some value. But I'd always weigh it against the convenience of having somebody else manage it, right? We all use cloud. It's the primary reason for cloud to work is that, hey, somebody else is making sure those racks have power, and if someone kicks the switch, that things are failed over, and all those benefits that we don't have to worry about today, right? Yeah. So it's a similar model.
Right. It reminds me. So recently, I was reading an interview with a CEO of SAP. And he was saying this one of his first job was to make the software modular so they could effectively start offering it as a SaaS. Because he was saying that even internally, they were terrified of doing an upgrade because it would customize it so much. Yeah. So we had to rebuild all the software to make it modular so we would be able to serve it as a software as a service, which was always at the latest version without having to worry. So that it was manageable. That's the interesting thing. It becomes manageable from a team that just managed the software, which is separated from the team that uses the software. And that is something that exists in databases. I'm data guy again, quite a lot. You have the person that managed the instance of the database,
the infrastructure,
and there is one, and that person is caring about access to storage, memory, size. What's in the database, I really don't care, or I vaguely care.
Yeah.
And it is quite interesting that distinction existed, and SaaS reopened it. And I'm just thinking about it now. Right? Even the biggest at that problem. So there is lots of benefits of going to the SaaS model, but yes, it also it requires you to move that data out with.
Yeah, you just got to have the proper controls and validations and get to that comfort level, I think, because the benefits are definitely there as well.
So just conscious that obviously we talk a lot about some of the issues and the challenges. Before we go into some of the stuff that you've been doing, which is really exciting, are there any other kind of challenges that you've been seeing that we haven't discussed yet that you also have felt need solving that you've been looking at?
I mean, one of them is definitely, how do we get to get beyond this kind of provider level cost management to broader business level cost management, right?
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of factors that matter for your FinOps practice. If you want to get to that mature level and do unit economics and margins and all these like higher level things, you can't just be saying my unit economics for AWS is X, right? Because your app may be using Snowflake and some on-prem solutions and some other people that send you an invoice in PDF, for example, right? So you have to be able to get to this kind of next level of your cost model, which incorporates a lot more than just the cloud. And, Foundation, I think, recently has been kind of talking about Cloud Plus. I think it's a hugely important shift. I've been Talengia or Backlab Plus for years. In fact, my 2022 FinOps X talk was about FinOps for SaaS. This is from my city days. But I just think this has to be done because no longer are people spending all of their money in just one place. Used to be you have AWS shop or I'm an Azure shop. Now everybody's kind of hybrid. Like I have some things in AWS. I like MongoDB Atlas, therefore I go get that. I go get some other, kind of software licenses maybe and things like that. Like your picture is much more broader than what it used to be. So you need to get to that kind of higher level cost model that brings in all of these different costs and is able to do FinOps on it as a business construct, not as a provider level construct.
I think it's interesting. I don't know if it has become broader in terms of people's usage. I think we've become more aware of it in FinOps. And I would have until a year ago entirely agreed with you, by the way. It's only because I've come and started seeing some of the ITAM side where it's a bit like a load of this stuff already existed. It's just that we in FinOps didn't really care before. People were using Mongo, whatever it might be. And I find it more and more interesting as I do more work that includes looking at the license implications that there's the whole questions around whether I should use RDS or whether I put it onto a VM and then apply it and all this. Where does my license sit? How do I get that license information? What do you mean there's no easy way of me doing? It's all these kind of pieces. Yes. There's a FinOps person. I spoke to an ITAM person in one of the biggest cloud spenders in Europe, right? Mm-hmm. And I said, so how do you interact with the cloud? And they said, it's a big black box. Mm-hmm. I have no idea what's in there.
Yep.
And this is a real problem that's been existing for ages. So I think it's actually great that we are now expanding to understand the broader picture. Yeah. But I think it's actually one that maybe has been waiting for us to look at it rather than it's just been appearing.
I think it's like when we were discussing before in our talk that we've done like FinOps as a foreign language. For finance as a foreign language, Stephen. And one of the things was to say, look, finance been there for 5,000 years. They probably have a word for it. It's more about, as you correctly said, is FinOps is getting aware that there is a world outside, and that world has moved, has existed, has ran well. Mm-hmm. I'm discussing, again, I was talking, there is a FinOps for data center, and it's quite interesting to see. So I've been in data centers, one of the few, and you see some things, you've never been into one there. But on another, or going back to what you were just saying, which I found extremely interesting, is roughly what we are saying is we would like FinOps to become invisible, just to be one other way to manage money. As you said, there is already a way to manage my data center. There is already a way to manage my item and my licenses. They should be just, FinOps should just be, it is complicated in its own, but from the enterprise level, it's just, it follows the same metrics. The ROI is calculated this way, the forecast is done that way. It's all done. It's interesting. Maybe success is becoming invisible.
Yeah. I definitely think FinOps teams would typically get the flashlight on them when something bad has happened, right? So, if you're in the background, good things are happening most likely.
Yes. Oh, don't worry. It was exactly the same when I was managing sysadmin. I was managing production stuff. Everything goes bad. It always comes to you.
You exist.
Like oh, yeah. Not only you exist, but now you are the throat I want to choke. Anyway, but so we talked about lots of things, that all the problems you see. So what are you, so you've talked a couple of times about things you were working on at the moment. Tell us more.
Yeah. So, I've been working on this data side of things for maturing FinOps organizations. How to make this run stage FinOps easier for organizations to achieve. Today, I think as we kind of already alluded to, it's very hard. You either need a bunch of unicorns or you need to essentially close your eyes and pretend that you're running, a run stage FinOps. I hate to say it that way, but that's the reality after talking to so many folks. vast majority are having to still use spreadsheets and kind of do things that we know are not scaling, but we don't really have a good option. It's either you make this jump to, find the unicorns and go make that magic happen, and spend a bunch of money, or you do the pretending, thing. So I wanted to solve that problem. Company that I've founded is called Stitcher AI, and we're providing think of it as a data engineering platform for purpose-built for FinOps and finance use cases. It gives a system of record for your FinOps practice. So you have a single place for you to manage all these configurations for bringing in the data sets, all the manipulations that need to happen. And then, FinOps is about driving outcomes from the broader organization. For that, you need the right data artifacts that then you can get to the right hands, the right tools, the right business processes. We definitely, as I mentioned earlier, we use a push model. We don't keep any of the data. Once the data is processed and the artifacts are created, we push that out to your organization, to the right places that you configure where you want to receive those. And the idea is that now when people are equipped with the right data, they're much more likely to be able to, make the right decisions that are business aligned and that are, efficient and whatnot, right? So you almost, by using this push model, you're making it hard for people to ignore FinOps, right? When it's a dashboard that, just a cost management platform that's just hosted somewhere, everybody has to go out of their way. If you're a finance person, you already have 12 dashboards that you're looking at. This becomes yet another thing that you have to do. If you're an engineer, you have security dashboards and many other things. Cost is always, and specifically FinOps data, becomes kind of a last priority until something bad happens. By using the push model, what you're doing is you're getting that data in the path of these folks on a regular basis in the places where they operate. Let's say your engineers, they use Grafana for their monitoring and other things. Great. You should be able to push some of your costs into Grafana so that they're able to view some of that right in line with other things that they're looking at on a daily basis, right? So this concept of pushing data to the right people in the right places at the right time is super important, and it's one of the main things we're solving with our product. So I know we're keeping this kind of at the problem level. I would say it's a data engineering platform that serves your kind of FinOps needs if you're planning to do run a mature organization, mature FinOps practice.
So, can you give some examples of things like that are specifically difficult to run in a mature practice? So a lot of people that would be listening to this are in kind of crawl, walk stage, but kind of are aspiring to get there and probably haven't hit the roadblocks that you've hit in your career, right? Yeah. What other things are really challenging that actually this is going to massively simplify for them? Putting data in the engineering's path is absolutely fantastic in terms of cost. No one wants. We had Mel Pinto come on and talk about the
engineer
fatigue. Engineer
yes.
fatigue. Yeah. Too many alerts, too many systems. People send me some crap on a spreadsheet. It's the last thing I want, right? From FinOps. So what other problems have you seen that this kind of solution, this kind of platform is going to help people answer in a much simpler way?
I'm going to actually give you guys a real example that I ran into. So when I was at Citi, I was presenting kind of the plan to drive FinOps across the Citi organization. So my boss's boss is the CTO of Citi. So I was speaking to him and his directs, right? So, basically everybody that manages this massive $5+ billion IT estate that Citi had. So I started with the cost management tool that I bought, that I used to build. And then I was going to get to kind of here's what we do in terms of pulling that data and many other data sources and do all the manipulations and drive this in the path. And he stops me right away. And, when I showed the tool that we bought, he's like, are those numbers the numbers you charge out at the end of the month? And I was like, well, no, this is the direct costs that are coming from AWS and GCP and some of the things we're using. And then we take that, we do all the shared cost allocations, we map, unmapped costs, we do a lot of different things. Actually there, that's how thick the platform is. The final amount you pay is roughly double the amount that you actually spend, directly in your usage, right? So it's like a huge difference. If you happen to budget and forecast from that original number, you would be way off. We would have major issues, city, given, that it's a highly regulated industry, public company that has to give forecasts and numbers out to the street. So his point was, you need to shut that down, because someone's going to look at those numbers and they're going to make
they're right.
mistake. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're going to come back to me and say, the CTO organization is hosting a tool that shows these numbers that are incorrect. And that led to this, let's say the payments business in city to be, vastly underestimating what their costs would have been. So I think it just made it crystal clear to me, at that time, that we have to be really accurate with our costs, and it has to be modeled to our organization. If those things aren't happening, we are essentially we're losing trust, when we go out to our customer base, which is the broader organization. We're trying to get them to buy into FinOps. Yep. And if our data is not good, they right away dismiss us and say, why would I trust you? Right.
And it can be more than that, right? So I can give an example of this happening literally last week. I was speaking to somebody, and there's a complex organization, but their enterprise support goes into one account, one of 17, 18 payers. I can't remember how it's got now, right? And a guy was like, right, we're doing chargeback in our business unit. Fantastic. Super. And I said, so we've just started building that out, and we're going to be incorporating other costs and stuff. We're going to start with cloud, and then we're going to bring in a few others. And I said, are you using your own CUR? Or are you using the enriched version? And they were like, what do you mean? And I said, well, your CUR doesn't have your support costs. It doesn't have the a bunch of other costs, like saying. Yeah. So if you go and build based on that as it is now, what you're building is going to be wrong, and you're going to get a differential between a delta between what you bill your customers and what you get billed by Central.
Yeah.
Oh, right. I didn't even know. It's like, well, in some regards, why would you? Yeah. You've been brought in new to do this. Yeah. But it could have been a huge amount of problematic effort. And thought they were about to start doing it in a few weeks' time. We got ahead of it. But those are the kind of things that are happening. And they so easily happen in a large organization. Yeah. And you do need that central platform.
There is the other. What I'm just also saying is in general, I remember being shocked some time ago, and it was in the UK, they were saying that the salary you get is fine. From the company perspective, even your gross salary is going to be double. You cost double your salary to the company, because there is the office, there is all this kind of stuff, your insurance, and everything stacks up. And all those things you do not see, because you just see, I'm making X. Yeah. I say, from the company perspective, X is one thing, and then there is 2X, and that's the overall package. And that was quite incredible to see all those. It's not hidden, but it is unexpected. How you do the math.
Yeah. And as we take FinOps, or as we accept the concept of finance in the part of the FinOps, you're exactly right. So I've got a perfect example of this, the exact same thing. So I took over a team. So our company got acquired and we merged and stuff, and I took over other teams full of wonderful people I had who I do miss working with. And I got their salaries sent across to me. And I was like, wow, they're on a lot of money. Like, this is going to cause me some major issues because my teams are on totally different amounts of money. But I'd been sent fully loaded costs by one.
Yes.
And I just had the salaries of the other.
Yes.
And so suddenly I was like, once I'd worked that out, but there's nothing that told me that, but it's those kind of pieces. And that's what you have in some regards. It's the same concept that finance understands, but maybe we don't in FinOps, we don't in engineering, is you've got fully loaded costs.
Yes.
And you've got just your cloud costs, and they're two totally different things. And the business really needs to care about fully loaded. And another example this goes into, I worked with a department who they started making their cloud costs visible to people. But it was the first thing they'd ever given to these app teams, product teams. Otherwise, everything was in one big bucket. And the costs still were in one big bucket for everything, including people. So people started going and doing optimizations, and you're thinking, fantastic. But because they had no idea of the context of other costs, they were doing optimizations that cost more in people time and cost than they saved in cloud costs. And that's the kind of thing where we haven't got this contextualized information in front of the right people in the right way. And I would say 75% of FinOps teams I see are still working with only cloud context.
Yeah. I mean, what you're talking about is those business value aware decisions, right? Like you want to make those decisions based on business value that you're going to get. And you can't do that just by looking at, kind of a subset of the things. So, but to answer your question earlier of like examples, like think of Stitcher AI as a system that allows you to ingest the data, do all the curation of the data, bring organizational context, teams and apps, and all of that stuff that are relevant to your consumers. Able to fill in the gaps in the data where hey, this thing can't be tagged. Great, we can go essentially manipulate that. Do all the cost allocation. Take the shared portions, whether it's from one provider to another provider or within providers, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, as long as you're taking the shared portions of your costs and making sure the right recipients are getting the right amounts of that shared cost. And that's going to drive a lot of conversation, right? About, hey, you just assign me $50,000 of Atlassian Jira costs. I barely use Jira. Great. Let's go look at how many licenses are assigned to you and allocated to you. And let's go get that, optimized to the, exactly. So I just think cost allocation is such a hugely important thing for FinOps practices, so that your end users get that real picture. Then we move on to kind of the generation of artifacts, right? As we mentioned, every FinOps practice, whether it be different KPIs that they want to use, different reports for chargeback, and the primary data set is very important with all these enhancements. Make sure we give you that. But then we give you essentially the ability to craft these custom reports and KPIs and views and things that really matter to your business. Otherwise, these become things that you take and build in a spreadsheet, right?
Yeah.
And then it becomes stale and it becomes not easily accessible to the broader organization.
I think
lastly, I'll say, go ahead.
I was going to say, I found like when I did try automating some of that myself, so I built some stuff out in Jupyter Notebooks using Pandas, Python, all of this.
Yes.
Then the problem was, A, it was all in my head. B, that could quickly grow stale. And it was like I was basically having to control my own production level thing to do relatively straightforward stuff that I could do in a spreadsheet, but I knew was better not in a spreadsheet because of the scales and all these kind of things. And it just becomes impossible to manage, doing it on your own.
If I say
exactly.
if VLOOKUP is your superpower, there is a problem.
There is at the cloud data scale, that is a problem.
Yeah, but also you should be using XLOOKUP now, Frank. Obviously, I mean, get your Excel
skills. But still, you need to open the file. If you can open the file, it's just too small.
Yeah, true. Sorry, Udam, carry on.
And I'd say cost controls, cost governance is an important part. You can do all of these things, but if you haven't built some proactive and reactive controls to make sure you stay within the boundaries that your organization expects to be in, again, you've got some nasty surprises that might come at the end of the day, right? So, that I would say is kind of the mechanical part of what we're building. The other part of it is how do you drive engagement, right?
Yeah.
We've built this as FinOps as code, so that, and it's a low code interface. So generally, non-technical people can come in and get the benefit of being able to do these things. But the idea is that now you're able to actually get these things out to your organization. FinOps has to be a bi-directional kind of interaction engagement model. It can't be, FinOps team pushes a bunch of stuff out and then expects everybody to participate and engage. Like, it doesn't happen that way. Those engineering managers or directors, they need to be able to come in and build their own controls, or they need to be able to build their own reports or do their cost allocations of certain things that they might, have. So by using this kind of FinOps as code approach, we make it so that it's much more capable of engaging the broader organization, so that, it's not Frank pushing to you and saying, here's the KPI you should care about. You're going and building the KPI that you think is relevant for your organization. Central FinOps team still has the controls to do a code review of that to make sure that you're not doing something, bad. But the idea is that the broader organization can get involved through this kind of product to build the things that are relevant to them and start engaging.
And is there any limitation on what kind of artifacts can be built?
Anything that can be built with your data set. We'd like to say you can build those, so generally think about it as, tabular data sets or artifacts, which, pretty much captures most things that you need to do.
Pretty much everything, yeah.
And then on the ingestion side, I would say it's a similar thing, though we also ingest things like PDFs and other things, so that, again, to go build that broader cost model, still SaaS vendors that charge you millions of dollars will still give you just a PDF, right? They may not have detailed cost and usage data. That needs to be back in your cost model so that your receivers are paying attention to those things. So
can I give you an example of a challenge, and you tell me how whether it can be solved by this? Because I've kind of had to work a way around it myself, but I think you could make it a lot simpler for me. Yeah. So in allocation, if you look at the FinOps training for practitioner, it talks about several types, like shared, proportional, fixed. But one of them is business rule, right? Which might say that any monitoring service gets charged to the platform team regardless of what accounts it's in. Every other thing goes to the owner of that account. So it's a kind of a business rule where maybe, and quite often with business rule stuff, you do it after the fact. So it's often a manual step or semi-manual step. You're probably doing it in Excel. But if I have everything if I had like all the service names that always get charged back based on that business rule, could I use your platform to automate that piece away, create those costs, create the artifact, and give those charges to that person?
1,000%. So the idea is that you can use any field that is in your data. It could be something that natively came in from the providers. It could have been something that you, in an earlier stage of the product, enhanced, right? Mm-hmm. And you essentially joined in, let's say, your team ID or a particular cost center or some other thing. You can use any of those things to ring fence and select an amount of cost that you want to then allocate, right? And when you say, okay, now I have this cost, I want to allocate it, the questions that it'll ask is, well, how do you want to allocate? Is it that proportionate, like you said, or is it an N way, or is it a fixed percentage? And let's say you use proportionate. Then it's going to say, okay, well, what is the factor that you want to use to do that allocation? That could be right in your cost data. Hey, I want to use how much S3 people used to determine how I want to allocate the networking costs. Or it might be an external data set, like we talked about business data sets earlier, right? Maybe there's some API usage rate, data set that you have available. You bring that in as a business data set and you say, I want to do that allocation based on that, right? So, and you're able to do this at the, billions of row level, granularity, so that the users really are able to get the right level of visibility that you as a shared team owner want your users to be able to have. You might want to say, hey, the service is not, 1/12th of this EC2 instance. Instead, this is for the finance data lake. Here's your portion, right? You're able to curate that even at that allocation level so that you get to see kind of how that data flowed to you and then be able to track it all the way across.
Yeah, and Steven, by the way, that same problem I had, but I've solved ages ago, was with, it was on QuickSight with calculated field. I was, like you say, Udam, I was adding fake columns that were generated, and I had 2 or 3 generations of fake columns calling
I
fake
call it synthetic column.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking I was going to have to make some sort of synthetic data
It is called synthetic columns, yes, correct. Or, anyway, my bad. I call them fake. Calculated, I think the official name is calculated fields, but they were only available by row. So
you tell your engineering organization, use this fake column, they're going to be like, Frank, are you sure?
I know, but I would use better wording probably.
So this is all very exciting that all this is being gained, but where are you up to with it? Like, when can people start using this stuff? What's happening?
Well, they can use it today. We have very large paid customers that are using the system.
Oh, that's great.
Some 9-figure cloud, bills flowing through the system and other types of data. So our website is stitcher.ai. You can go there and sign up for a demo, and you'll probably get me as the as the demoer. And but yeah, we're going to be at FinOps X. We'll have a booth there.
Right.
Love to talk to the community. A lot of this stuff has been in my head from, having played all these different roles in FinOps, but I've been able to, over the last few, for last year or so, do a lot of validation of these problems with practitioners and what's holding them back. So really excited to kind of see as we kind of come out of stealth here and have a booth and all this stuff, like to see the conversations we have. I'm sure there'll be a million other things that people want that they'll say, I want to do this with the data or that other thing. Great. I love it. Like, let's go build it. That's the flexibility of a platform like ours, is we were able to pretty easily add those capabilities. So
what I think is super interesting about this, Udam, is the things you're doing here before were just the province of people who were at very large scale, who could afford to have the teams, like you said earlier, who could afford to have the teams to build this, manage it, and were therefore willing to invest in maturing to that level because the return would be greater. Here, you're opening up that level of kind of investment, as it were, like what would cost that level of investment to people who are not at the same scale, right? That's how I'm taking from it. Suddenly, this ability to mature and do things that you would want to hire 5 developers to go and do might actually become available, which you were never going to get to in the past.
We say we're making the Fortune FinOps like the Fortune 50, right? Because those folks have had that ability, as you said, to spend the money to build these kind of fancy tools that give you this rich data set to go run your FinOps practice from. Now the broader set of FinOps practices can really equip themselves with this. And I just think it's such an important thing for us to get to that run stage. Organizations going forward, if you just look even the next 4 or 5 years, the ones that are able to deploy their OpEx capital in a sensible way are going to be far ahead of the competition. Because I think you've all seen Gartner says 30% of cloud investments are waste, right?
Yeah.
Imagine some organization is working with 95 cents to the dollar and another organization is working with 70 cents on the dollar, right? Who do you think is going to, be able to get ahead?
Who's going to win? Yeah.
Who's going to win, right? So winners and losers in this next decade will be determined by how well organizations are able to deploy their OpEx capital, right? Cloud SaaS AI not going to go away. They're only increasing, so every organization, I would encourage them to start thinking about whether it's building your own or using a tool like ours or some other solution. How do you improve your FinOps practice and get to that level where you're the enabler? Because at scale, you won't be able to be the fixer. You'll always be playing catch up, right?
Fantastic. I'm just conscious of time, and I just wanted to say to listeners who kind of think that maybe we pre-planned some of these questions so Udam could smash them out of the park so well. I wasn't even on the short prep call this time. It is just how good Udam is at this stuff. I didn't know what he was going to say to any of my questions, but it's very, very exciting. I do think it's it could be a real game changer for some people. I know some organizations.
We need an account with them, both of us,
and
we need fake data.
Yeah,
okay. Some billion rows, that kind of stuff.
I'm going to actually in our app, change the term business data set to fake data set.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's not. I think it's cloud data. It doesn't matter. That's what we hear in FinOps. Right?
How else can we drive better, trust amongst FinOps teams?
You just ignore me. That's fine. Just call it the right way. I'm not. That's the first word that comes to my mind. Ignore me. Everyone does it very well.
Yeah. I appreciate you guys giving me a time, and this is just something I'm really passionate about. This kind of FinOps maturity problem. Okay. So appreciate the time.
Perfect. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much, listeners. Thank you very much, Stephen, and obviously Udam for being the star of today.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for joining us, Udam.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.